Welcome to Horror Makes Us Happy, the podcast where we ask the question, what is it about horror that makes us happy? Your hosts are...
Sorry. I feel happy. Go ahead.
I feel happy. Yeah, go for a walk.
You're not fooling anyone.
Welcome to Horror Makes Us Happy, the podcast where we ask the question, what is it about horror that makes us happy? Your hosts are Steve Becker and myself, Chris Whitman, and you can find out more about us at our website, horrormakesushappy.com. Before we get started, this is the trigger warning. This is a horror podcast, so we will be talking about horror culture and potential sensitive subjects that could involve things like child abuse, murder, rape, F-bombs. Just got to get it out of the way because it is a possibility. It doesn't actually happen that often, but it could. So we have to disclaim. But with that, let's see, what do we got coming up in the near future, Steve?
Well, we've still got 10 people on deck, actors, directors.
10? You did good work at StokerCon, sir.
They're the ones coming to us now, which is the kind of the point.
It's nice, right?
Yes. I've actually had time to work on other things for a chance. I'll be reposting the clips from all of our interviews to TikTok and Instagram over the last month or so. I had been redoing them with proper audio from the calls and pictures and things like that, because previously, long time ago, I had just been doing Instagram off of my phone pointed at the screen. It was a mess. So I was like, screw it, let's redo it. So finally got that out of the way. And having, like you said, got a couple people booked after StokerCon and Days of the Dead, that helped give me some more free time to wrap that up. So I actually finished that this morning. And so hopefully over the next week or two, I'll start posting them. That'll be nice. What else? Yes. Little self-promotion, Chris's webcomic, piecesofflesh.com. You can go check that out. Also, my book, A Guide to the Recovery Toolbox. I've got a coupon code for that over at smashwords.com. You can get it for 99 cents, the electronic version, obviously.
You do sell a hard copy somewhere, right? Like Amazon, I guess?
Paperback.
Right.
Amazon or lulu.com. I don't think I can do a coupon code for Lulu. I got to look into that. But coupon code for Smashwords is LE69E. I think I also posted that recently on Twitter, so you can go check it out on Twitter if you don't want to write that down.
Nice.
What else? Listen parties on Discord every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Mm-hmm. That is plenty for now.
Yep.
So moving into the interview. Today we have with us author Lee Allen Howard, known for such works as Death Perception, The Sixth Sense, and The Bedwetter. Hello.
Welcome to the show, Lee.
Hi, great to be here.
Our pleasure.
Yes.
I don't know how...
Do you go by Lee or Lee Allen?
Lee.
Okay.
Good question.
I'll give you a little background on that. I have three first names and three last names. And, I thought my name was kind of unique. I don't know a whole lot of other guys named Lee, and Howard's not a, rare name, but I don't meet that many Howards either. But when I searched on Amazon for Lee Howard, there's a Lee Howard out there that writes Scooby-Doo mystery novels. Yeah, so I wouldn't mind having that gig, but I didn't want to be confused with him. So I just stuck my middle name in there and made it as unique as I could.
That works. Yep.
That is also something good for the listeners to know, so that they actually search for Lee Allen Howard instead of Lee Howard. Particularly because, if it was a Scooby-Doo mystery, you might think there might be some overlap there, but apparently not. I don't know how much we talked offline about the theme of the interview, but I know what I handed to you at StokerCon had some of the gist of it. We will talk about you being a fan of the genre from childhood into teenage years and adulthood, and then there's a wrap-up section at the end where we talk about any themes that have come up. That said, it's not meant to be a therapy session, so if there's anything that you don't want to talk about, just say pass and we'll move on. But before we get into that, do you want to let us know when you're currently working on?
Sure. Just this past Friday, 2 days ago, I released The Covenant Sacrifice, which is LGBTQ horror. What are some other tags that I describe that with? Cult horror, religious horror, folk horror, rural horror, if I can say that, gay romance, paranormal romance.
Okay.
So it's
there's plenty in there.
There's plenty in there, yeah. It's my typical genre soup.
Okay. jumping into childhood, what are some of your earliest memories of scary things?
Oh goodness! Back then, there weren't a whole lot of scary things like there are today. We only had 3 channels on the television, and I don't know where I got my love of horror from. It wasn't from either of my parents. My father was an evangelical pastor at the time. I think my first foray into horror was, I don't know if you experienced this when you were a kid, but in my elementary school, every month the teacher would pass out these Scholastic book flyers with, it was like a little catalog, 4-page catalog or something of books for kids. And there was a book in there from Norman Bridwell called How to Care for Your Monster. It was published in 1970. And he's known much more for Clifford the Big Red Dog.
Yep. Oh.
But he wrote this little book that was horror with humor about, chapters, each chapter on how to care for, vampire, how to care for the Wolfman, how to care for the mummy, and I think there was something else. But anyway, that's kind of what turned me on. I probably didn't see any movies besides maybe the old Dracula.
Hammer Universal films.
Yeah, the old ones from like the 30s. 40s. I also ran home, elementary school, to make it home by 4 o'clock for Dark Shadows, which I loved. It was like a soap opera. Yep. So those, I guess, were my earliest influences in childhood. Later on, when I was in, I don't know, maybe 8th grade, I got a hold of Thomas Tryon's The Other, and that just totally electrified me, and I wanted to become a horror writer because of that. That and James Herbert's The Rats, which was his debut.
Okay.
And from there, horror never left me.
I have not heard of Thomas Tryon before. How did you? It sounded like you grew up in a bit of a rural area yourself, or no?
Not at that time. We did move to a rural area, and I probably got a hold of it either in the school library or it was on like a shelf in a classroom. In fact, I think that copy of The Rats, it had like room 801 or whatever it was, or 103, marked on the, not the spine, but the edges of the book. Well, I remember taking a razor blade and cutting those off because I took that home and I kept it. So that was my first horror-related theft. So what was the original question?
I was just wondering how you got your hands on it, because I was thinking, I mean, the author's name was not familiar to me, and I was thinking if you did live in a rural area, I'm like, how did you even get that?
Yeah,
but
it had to have been through school because I wasn't, or perhaps, my local library, but I don't remember going into bookshops at that time. So, yeah, Thomas Tryon was he's actually a gay author, but he was in a movie, I think it was in the 50s, called I Married a Man from Outer Space.
Okay.
Quite a handsome fellow, but he started out with The Other, not to be confused with Nicole Kidman starring in The Others, which came much later.
Singular, not plural.
Yes.
I wonder, was The Other about the whole psychological aspect of the other, as in the other self, or?
The Other is about 2 twin boys and the kind of relationship that they have, and their grandmother kind of teaching one of them how to use, I guess, kind of psychic powers. But of course, at that age, I found it very thrilling, and it was, I'd never read anything like that. So, and it was probably one of my first adult novels that I read. And
sounds
he
like
also,
Good Night Mommy meets The Shining.
He also wrote Harvest Home, which is kind of a folk horror thing. They did a mini series on it, starring with Betty Davis. She was an older woman. Anyway, I highly recommend those two. And, The Other and The Rats by Herbert. Those are the 2 iconic books that really stick in my memory and that I always refer to.
Okay. Going back to The Other, I mean, so you gave us a general synopsis of what it was about, but what did you enjoy about it other than maybe just those basic facts?
There was the twins. One of them was good and tried to discourage the other one from getting into trouble, but the other one was he was kind of pushed the envelope. And just the way that Tryon revealed things in the book compiled horror upon horror, and then at the climax, there's a revelation that just totally blew me away. And I don't want to share it here because I don't want to spoil it for anybody, because I really like people to read that. And I wish that I would. The book is, I believe it's out of print. I would like to put it back into print.
Without giving away what the thing was, what was your emotional reaction to it?
I think this is what I loved first about horror, is that I would get like this surge of adrenaline, and, my eyebrows would go up, and I would be like, holy shit, I never saw that coming. And I may nowadays, but I didn't when I was, 12 years old. So it was that surprise, that twist at the end that really clinched it for me.
Okay. I'm almost tempted to suggest that we edit it out of the final interview just to hear what it is. Wondering if that says anything.
No spoilers for you either.
Yeah, right. I guess we can come back to that maybe. What about the rats?
It wasn't a very long book, but it was set in, I think it was London, where they were being overrun by rats. And there's this new breed of rat that is kind of spreading through the city. And they're very violent, and they attack people. And so there's like chapters or scenes, episodes in the book where, you'll have a character, they'll introduce the character, and then Herbert will, proceed to kill them off by this invasion or their encounter with these rats. And, the main character is trying to get city people to, really take action on this. And of course they screw it up. And then there's this, massive rat attack. So there's a lot of, it was very visceral, very bloody. And the ending of that one too was, he really set it up for a sequel. And I think he wrote 2 other books. I cannot remember the names of those, but that is the first of his novels, and the first in the 3-book series.
Okay. Other than maybe the fact that it was visceral and bloody, what did you like about those? Or was it just the fact that it was visceral and bloody?
Yeah, that works.
What did I like about it? Yes, that it was visceral and bloody. And, there were certain things in my childhood that were especially horrific to me. And of course, there weren't as many back in my days as there are now. It's, horror has splintered so much, but, rats, spiders, skeletons, ghosts. I actually wrote a story in, I think it was 2nd grade, that was full of skeletons, witches, and blood. And my teacher gave it to my elementary school principal, who read it. And he was the president of the local Lions Club where we lived. And my father was also a member. And Principal Sprunger fined my father, the pastor, a dime because the pastor's son had written such a horrific story full of skeletons, witches, and blood.
Fined him? Like actually charged him money?
Yeah. And, that's the first time that money exchanged hands for my fiction, but it did not end up in my pocket because I would have gone down the street and bought myself an ice cream cone at the White Cottage because they were a dime. But, the rats, it was very, very thrilling. And I guess there were some sex scenes in it that I hadn't really, read before at that age. So it was just kind of racy and very exciting to me.
How'd your dad take to the fine?
He laughed.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, I wasn't in any trouble, but
just checking, because who knows? Could have gone. You said your dad was an evangelical pastor.
Yeah, I think that it was all in good humor.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So
I can also relate to the overreaction of school administration to slightly disturbing stories. I think mine was later in high school as a freshman, but Yeah, I got the same treatment. Like, so this is a good story, but we need to talk.
Just checking.
Yeah, kind of like Facebook. You know, when I search for horror, it says it pops up and it says, "Do you need help?" It actually does. It does.
Just checking
double
on you.
entendres.
When you mentioned a horrific childhood, and then talking about rats and spiders and skeletons and stuff like that, at first I thought you were talking about, actually having something traumatizing happen during your childhood, but it sounds like maybe that's not exactly what you meant. Maybe you were talking about this.
Yeah, it was, I don't know, general things that I found scary then. I didn't have a traumatic childhood. It was pretty good. But, I don't know why I thought that, skeletons could just get up and move on their own when they didn't have any musculature to power those bones, but that was like one of my fears. That, and when my best friend and I were playing, we were always involved with quicksand.
Yes.
Quicksand is a big danger, and
Yes.
I never experienced that.
A much bigger problem than we knew.
That's right.
Did you participate in Halloween as a kid?
Yes. Yeah, we went door to door, and I dressed up. I think I went as Frankenstein one year. I probably went as a ghost one year.
Favorite costume?
I think I went as Bigfoot one year, although I'm not really that tall. I'm only 5'9", but I took a pair of my dad's old pajamas, dyed them black with Rit dye, and then I used some kind of a crochet hook or something like that to pull through lengths of brown yarn, in inch squares, so that I would turn into this furry thing. So I think that was the most work I ever put into a costume, and that's why I
can't
remember.
think of the name of it now, but I've talked to a couple of people who cosplayed as Chewbacca, and I think it's like hair punching or something like that, but they do the same thing, only much denser and several thousand times.
Yeah, it's the same kind of process that they use. Like if you get your hair highlighted and they put a cap on your head, and then she pulls little strands of hairs through to bleach them.
That had to be a hot costume.
Yeah, but where we lived, I remember wearing my winter coat for.
I was going to say it was October, so
yeah, and there was snow on the ground. So.
Well, this is coming from someone living in Florida, so October here is 70s.
Yeah. Lucky if it's 70s, probably 80s or 90s still.
Yeah.
Least favorite costume in childhood?
Well, they used to sell these. I think they do still sell these things, but they had them where they had some kind of a jumpsuit type thing that was your character, and then there was a plastic mask with a little slit in the mouth, this little elliptical slit that you could
We're gonna have to start a tally, Steve.
Stick your tongue through there. And
okay, you know what? We have gotten these are Ben Cooper costumes. We know this now because they've come up so many times in this podcast. But I think, congrats, because I think you're the only one to unprompted bring up the tongue and the slit thing.
Oh yeah,
it's totally a thing with those.
I remember that, and cutting my taste buds off on that little slit,
right? Because you have to, you're just drawn to stick your tongue through the thing, and then it gets stuck, and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then you never do that again.
Yeah.
Most people never do that again.
Present company excluded.
I don't know.
And then if you wore the mask more than once, then it was it started to smell like candy breath,
That too.
Or blood, depending how badly you cut your tongue.
Depending on what they were handing out door to door.
That too, yeah. Did you have any scary dreams as a kid?
I had this recurring nightmare where Dracula, the Wolfman, and the Mummy were chasing me around the house at breakneck speed, and they were just right behind me. And that happened several times in my childhood.
Interesting that you had all three of them chasing you.
Yes,
yeah, right.
All three, because that's basically... they were the top three monsters at that time. There wasn't any Freddy Krueger, there wasn't any Michael Myers, or, anything like that. And I do remember What else did I watch when I lived there? That was before I was 9. I think I watched Kolchak, The Night Stalker.
That sounds familiar.
There were 2 movies, Kolchak, The Night Stalker, and then The Night Strangler, and then there was a television series. I think it was from maybe 1972 to 4, or maybe 4 to 5, something like that.
Was The Night Stalker about Richard Ramirez? Probably just a common title.
Yeah. And also when I was an adolescent, Trilogy of Terror, these 3 vignettes starring Karen Black. Mm-hmm. And there was one about a Zuni fetish doll. Mm-hmm. And the story was originally written by Richard Matheson. And it was
brought that up.
Still
a couple of times.
That's another one that sticks in my mind as something that's, seminal in gearing me toward horror.
I want to say it was Nicholas Berman Vince, the Chatterer. I think he was the one that brought up that Zuni doll.
Yeah, I think he's brought up the Zuni doll. Another one of our guests, I can't remember who it was. I think it was a woman, an author. But yeah, that's usually the first thing that comes to mind when anyone mentions Trilogy of Terror is the Zuni doll.
Yeah.
It's creepy.
Did you have anything in real life terrify you as a kid?
I can't really. Nothing is coming to mind right now.
Okay. Not every question's going to land. We just ask because you never know.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first person that you hurt?
The first person that I hurt, I think that would be my sister.
Okay.
I cannot remember what she did to me, but I had a pair of scissors, and not safety scissors, a pair of chrome scissors, with black handles like they used to have.
Fabric scissors.
Yes, because my mother was a seamstress, and so I think I grabbed those, and she got it in the arm.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. And there were consequences for that.
Yeah, I'll bet.
I want to chime in here on this one because this is a new feature that we're adding to the podcast. And you know what, Steve? I think this is going to be an interesting one because when you're talking about childhood, especially, injuries happen accidentally a lot, or just, you don't know what you're doing because you're a child. So I have a feeling a lot of the answer in childhood is going to be, this thing happened, I had no idea what I was doing. Case in point, in my case, I broke a girl's collarbone in preschool.
Oh my.
I was backing away from the teacher who was scolding me for doing something wrong, and I fell onto her. And no one believes me to this day, but that is my story. I'm sticking to it. I think I was like 5, 6 maybe. And I sent a girl to the hospital. Wow. That's the first time I hurt someone.
Yeah. Well, you said you don't remember why that happened. So
yeah, and that's what I'm saying. If we do this in childhood, that's going to, I have a feeling it's going to come to a lot of, this thing happened because I was a kid and I had no idea what I was doing.
Well, but some people may have a recollection of why it happened. You never know.
True. Yeah.
So the second one in that pair of questions is, do you remember the first person you helped?
That's a good one.
I don't know if this was the first person I helped. I'm sure it wasn't. I think I was about 12, and I was out with a friend who was, I think, a year younger than me. And it was wintertime, and we'd been sled riding or somewhere out in the cold, and it was very cold. And his feet were freezing. And I can't remember where we were sitting, but he was afraid, like on the verge of tears, that he was going to get frostbite in his toes, and he was going to lose his toes. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, why don't you put them on my stomach? Mm-hmm. And so he took off his boots and socks, and I lifted up my shirt, and he put them on my stomach, and I gasped, and I crossed my arms over his feet and toes until they got warm. Mm-hmm. And, he remembers that to this day, and that was, 50 years ago.
I should think he would. That's a really good idea.
Based on the gasp, I'm guessing that they were pretty cold.
They were cold. Toe sickles.
Yeah. I mean, that's like the worst intentional version of, cold feet in the bed at night. Like, please put your feet directly on the most vulnerable spot of my body, and your feet are probably ice cold. Yeah. But hey, it got the job done, right?
Yeah. Nice that you're still friends with someone that you knew at 12 as well.
That too.
Let's see. Was there ever a time in your childhood when you felt completely calm or safe or at bliss?
I think probably the majority of the time I did. There wasn't any extreme trauma when I was a kid. We lived in a small community that was, we had the run of the neighborhood. I hit the door at like 7 a.m., in the summer and would be gone until lunch. And then wouldn't come back until dinner time, and then wouldn't come back until dark. And we had the run of town, usually in our bare feet. The town of Bern, out in Indiana, that thing is flat as a pancake. And I easily put 20 miles a day on my bike. But we, my friends and I, we went everywhere. So, I felt safe. There weren't any play dates or anything like that. You made your own friends. If you misbehaved, your friend's mother would, read you the riot act, bring you out, or, swat your ass and send you home and either call her or, my mom would ask, and then she'd swat me again. So, now that kind of corporal punishment is seen as being traumatic, but it, I don't know that it made me any worse for who I am, although I, do write horror. So.
That doesn't necessarily make you a bad or a damaged person. I think that's what this show is all about.
Yeah.
Moving into teen years, then, what were some of the scary stories or books or movies that affected you in your teenage years?
Okay, starting in adolescence, that's when I read, The Other and The Rats. There was another big collection of stories called, I think it's Tales of Terror and the Supernatural. Very thick book. I had a paperback copy, and I read a lot of those. And I think it was originally published in 1947. My father, the pastor, he took down off the top shelf in our den his college freshman English literature reader. And he opened it to a story by William Faulkner called Rose for Emily. And that was another one that just really, really exploded in my mind. I already mentioned Kolchak the Night Stalker. There was a movie called Berserk. I think that came out in 1967. I saw that. I think there was some kind
Was it about a guy who was a knight that got his hand bit off by crazy amorphous creatures, and then there was also another knight named Griffith with white hair, but he was evil?
No, I think this was...
Okay, so
I'm not sure if Joan Crawford was in it. I know that there was a scene with circus high wire performers in it. And somehow that one sticks in my mind. And there was another one called Crowhaven Farm. And I think it was a made-for-television movie. It was an Irwin Allen production. And it starred Hope Lang, who she and her husband, I guess, inherit this house. And then she starts having dreams and memories about being tortured as some pilgrim, like she's been reincarnated, and the people that are in her dream are there around her in real life. And one of the things that they do is they put this kind of like wooden plank or door on top of her when she's pregnant, and they start stacking stones on it. And that one just really, I just watched it like a week or two ago, and of course it was there was nothing that exciting about it, but at a tender age it really raised my hackles.
Yeah, I mean, especially if if that's a new concept to you, that method of torture. And the crazy and really disturbing thing about that is that's real. That is a thing they used to do to people, just stack stones on top of a plank or a piece of wood until they smooshed them to death.
Mm-hmm. That's what it was about. And I didn't really get into, like I said, they didn't really televise a whole lot of movies. I mean, cable wasn't invented until I was in college, like a college freshman. So it's very limited. And my parents didn't take me to anything too scary. So it was when I was able to drive, when I was like 16, that I started going to movies. And of course, I saw the original Star Wars then, which I thought was just tremendous. Special effects were so amazing.
Yeah.
And I also saw a number of the Blue Lagoon. That's not horror at all, but I just really love that one. First nudity that I saw in a movie. And then I saw this movie called Halloween by a director named John Carpenter. And
Never heard of it.
that one it was really, really different for its day. And I loved that one. And there were other ones, Prophecy, about some kind of mutant bear.
Oh, yeah. That is a really awesome film with a crazy concept that's really cool. Yeah. It just has a few scenes in it that just kind of like break the whole thing. Other than that, it would have been awesome.
Yeah. So I was able to see things like that came to our local theaters.
Okay. Going back to A Rose for Emily, what did you like about that one?
Well, it was rather understated and subtle. But in the end, well, I'm going to spoil it for anybody that's not read it. But we find out that this woman has, I guess, I can't remember, has she poisoned her husband or her lover? And he's still lying in bed, as a corpse, as a skeleton. And beside him, on the other pillow is a single iron gray hair that lets you know that she's been sleeping beside him all this time. So it's those endings that really end with a punch to the gut that really turned me on.
Mm-hmm.
Was it the fact that she was sleeping next to a corpse that was?
Yes, because you don't really figure it out until the very last line, and then the horror, the realization happens in your mind, and you're just left there. This is the end, and you're left there with that revelation.
Wow,
got it.
Yeah,
Southern Gothic.
Yeah. Tales of Terror and the Supernatural. It sounded like that was some sort of a anthology, maybe, or
yes, it was an anthology of much older fiction, even from like the 1800s. The Monkey's Paw was in there.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a few other things, but it was originally published in 1947. I don't know if they ever swapped any stories out, but it was like late 1800s and the first half of the 20th century. So, and it was very thick book, so there were a lot of stories in it, and there was, probably, gosh, I can't think of the name of this guy. August Derleth. That's not him. I'm sorry, I can't remember.
Okay. Do you remember, other than the Monkey's Paw, do you remember any other stories that stood out to you?
No, not by name. I would have to look through the table of contents, and that would, jog my memory for what I thought was really memorable.
Do you remember a story in general, of just, even if you don't remember the name of the story?
No.
Okay.
Not off the top of my head. Not enough to put it together in any kind of discernible fashion.
Okay. What about Berserk? What spoke to you about Berserk?
I think there was a scene where there were these two high wire performers, and one of them, like, I don't know whether there is no net under them or the net breaks or something, but one of them falls off and they just, hit the ground, and it just, really shocked me. I guess it's the same feeling that I still get when I watch America's Funniest Home Videos. I mean, when it first came out, it was a pretty good show. Now it's just videos about stupid people getting hurt. Like falling off of a fence or something like that. And I get this terrible, like, feeling in my stomach, like I've been poked there or something. But I guess that's kind of the feeling that I got when I watched Berserk. And there was a couple movies, Hush Hush, Sweet Charlotte. I think that was from the 60s. And there was another, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. with Joan Crawford and Betty Davis.
Okay. Well, we've got already here a couple to talk about. How about Halloween? You mentioned that one really stood out to you for what it did at the time.
Yes.
Can you describe that?
I guess the sense of relentless suspense, knowing that, Michael Myers, this guy with a mask on, he was in the house. He was in the dark house. And, of course, the misbehaving teenagers don't know that he's there. And suddenly he, steps out and, pins some guy to the wall in the kitchen. And then, you go upstairs and there's a headstone on the girl's bed. And Jamie Lee Curtis, it was just so many scenes where she almost got it, and it was just, I was on the very edge of my seat. And there just wasn't anything that I had seen prior to that was like it. And it just I remember gushing about it to people, and I probably saw it more than once.
What about Prophecy?
That's in my queue now. I need to rewatch it. I think the concept of it was very interesting, and of course, some mutant creature, and seeing, on the big screen, seeing R-rated movies for the first time. My parents certainly never took me to any R-rated movies. In fact, during that time, they didn't even have PG-13 yet.
Right.
They did have R. They had G, they had PG, and then they had X movies. And I think my dad took me one time to a PG movie. It wasn't a horror movie. We went to the drive-in. He didn't appreciate the movie. It was, I don't know, something with Burt Reynolds in it. And so, I was very kind of sheltered. So when I saw our movies and there was a lot of violence and blood in it, I had never seen that before. So it was a big deal.
Going back to the Prophecy for a minute, part of what we do, sometimes digging into our emotions helps point out something that we've overlooked or missed or something like that. And so for the Prophecy, you just mentioned, mutant creatures, but was there anything in particular that, sparked any kind of a reaction?
Well, seeing it on the big screen and also seeing it in color was something that was, certainly contributed to it, because a lot of the stuff that was on TV still in those days, especially if they were older movies, they were in black and white.
Right.
And of course, nothing was that graphic. So seeing the special effects, the makeup effects on the creature of that size in color was shocking. So some of those first movies that I saw, it's not that they were so great, it's that I'd never seen anything like that before.
Spectacle.
Yeah. And so they stick in my mind.
Got it. Did you participate in Halloween in your teenage years?
I believe I did, but at some point I stopped. I don't know when I stopped. Probably all throughout high school when I lived at home. After I went away to college, then of course that came to an end. Although, I did go to Halloween parties.
Right.
Yep.
Favorite costume during your teens?
I remember one time I put on some makeup to be a zombie, and it was, I don't know, there was temper paint, something like that, something that probably shouldn't be used on your skin.
I have a feeling this is going to be another combo favorite and least costume.
Yeah, and of course I painted my face with this, and then when it dried, it kind of cracked and flaked. And then I, put black stuff on my eyes, and I don't know what I put on my lips. Maybe it was black too, but it was, I was a zombie, so I had ripped clothing and things like that. And then I went out. I was 21, so I was out at the bars with that and dancing with that stuff with makeup flaking off my face onto the dance floor.
That's not as bad as I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to say it stained your skin.
No, it did not.
I was thinking some kind of skin damage. Yeah. But glad that didn't happen.
Least favorite costume during your teens?
I can't really remember.
Okay.
Probably something that was either too hot or bulky or had props with it that came to be a pain in the ass, by the end of the evening, or that I had to like set down or put under my arm if I wanted to actually eat some candy between houses.
Right. Did you have any scary dreams as a teen?
Yes. I can't remember them now. But nightmares were a thing when I was younger.
Okay. If you don't remember what they were about, in terms of the actual dream content, do you remember them maybe having a similar theme in terms of emotional? Was it anxiety? Was it, trying to think some other examples? Do you have any sense at all of there being a common theme, or just?
Well, I probably had the common stress dreams of not being prepared for something, or getting off the school bus and I don't have my pants on, or usually it had something to do with something being after me, or somebody I knew, or somebody that was close to me and something happening to them, that kind of things that I didn't want to happen in real life that would be very traumatic, very horrifying, or traumatizing.
Okay. Was there ever a time in your teens when you were terrified of something in real life?
Yeah, I wasn't out then, and I didn't own up to my orientation as a gay male. And so, back in my day, people were extremely inappropriate with stuff like that. And, language, fag, queer was bandied about by a lot of people. That's not really acceptable today. But I was around 16. I was in one of the high school restrooms. And one guy that was kind of a joker, kind of a clown guy. He was also kind of a dick. He was in the restroom with me, and I was there. And I don't know whether I was in the stall or the urinal or the sink or something, and he wasn't quite there with me, right beside me or anything. But he called me a fag, and of course, I'm having heart palpitations and everything, because here's this guy. I don't want to be beaten up, because that happened too. But I kind of confronted him, and I said, "What did you call me?" And he kind of started backpedaling, tough guy. And I just kind of got real intense with him. And he kind of backed away and left. And I think it was either my 35th or my 40th class reunion. I met him there. Still has the same curly hair. It's grayer. And we're standing around in a circle with some other people, drinking our beer or whatever. And he asked me who I am. And I told him, I said, I'm Lee Howard. And he got this sick look on my face. And he wouldn't look me in the eye. So here I thought I was terrified all these years. And every time I remembered it, it just made me sick, this memory. But here I basically owned him in that restroom. And he still remembered it. And he couldn't look me in the eye still when we were like over 50 years old. I'm like, I think I need to, kind of readjust that memory.
I wonder if, and you know him obviously better than I do, even if that's not much, but, there are a lot of people who overcompensate, shall we say?
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
I wonder if he was feeling ashamed for that.
I don't know. I don't know.
Guess we may never know.
Yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to ask him.
Yeah, that's not really like a friendly subject to bring up.
Let's see. Was there ever a time in your teens where you felt completely calm or safe or bliss?
No.
Okay.
No. No, things had changed once I reached puberty and I was dealing with, issues and, things that weren't acceptable in my, not just the general community, but certainly in my religious upbringing.
Yeah.
So I always felt like everybody was watching me, or they could, tell. And if they knew what I was really like. Was I going to get beat up? Was I going to get, berated for it?
Right. Okay, moving into adult years then. What are some of the scary stories or books or movies that have stood out to you in your adult years?
I believe that's when I started reading Stephen King.
Mm.
I think maybe the first one that I read of his was The Shining.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until later when I always had always tried my hand at writing stories, and they were usually dark in nature, but I didn't get anything published at that time. But when I really started reading horror diligently, it was a lot of Stephen King, Ramsey Campbell, whom I love, Joe R. Lansdale. Those are the ones that are coming to mind. I mean, I've read so many things that I read them, and next month I can't even remember what the title is anymore.
Well,
My mother's the same way. She's like a book every 2 weeks.
That might kill the answers to my questions that I was going to ask. But
well, sorry, I'm like really old, so some of this stuff has happened a long time ago.
I was going to ask for Ramsey Campbell and Joe Lansdale, because you had mentioned The Shining for Stephen King. I was going to ask for the other two authors if you had one book that stood out to you from each of those.
I think that I don't know whether this was the first of Campbell's that I read, but I think this was his first novel, The Doll Who Ate His Mother. I've read that at least 3 times, and it's not strictly horror. It's more like kind of a thriller, but I read some of his short fictions. I had a couple of anthologies. I think one was Alone with the Horrors. But just the feeling of dread and confusion and anxiety, that they caused, and how he was able to put those kind of emotions in the story and evoke them from readers, from me, is something that I really wish I could figure out so that I could do the same. But he's absolutely a master at that.
What about Joe Lansdale?
Joe Lansdale, I think one of the first things that I read of his was Mucho Mojo.
That's a fun title.
Yes, it was the Hap and Leonard series.
Really?
Yes. I can't remember whether I read the second one first or whether I started with the first one.
I've been looking to check that out, because that's also a TV series or an online streaming series starring Pollyanna McIntosh.
Yes.
Who also had a show.
Yes. I thought the books were better, but the show was pretty good, and I was happy.
What has Hap and Leonard
for
about?
him. What has happened to what?
Yeah, what exactly has Hap and Leonard about? Like, what's the?
Hap and Leonard are these two characters, and they team up to solve mysteries, but they're dark mysteries. And Hap, I think, is a white guy. Leonard is kind of a really tough black gay guy. And they team up together with some really seedy Southerners. I think that it's set in Texas. And it's just kind of gritty, but, he writes very well. So I haven't read the entire series. I think he's coming out with something new, too, recently with them as characters. But there were those, and I know I read a few others of his early. Collection of short stories, I think in the title was something about high cotton.
Okay.
And I liked his stories in that one, although I can't really remember, any of them by name or subject matter.
What do you remember about Mucho Mojo?
Seeing a gay character in it, that wasn't some tragic person. It was just kind of like taken for granted almost. Mm-hmm. And that they were, he was really a gritty, kind of tough person character. Mm-hmm. And, the combination of horror and mystery was something that I really enjoyed. Because if I would say, like, where am I on the genre spectrum, typically horror is lumped in with speculative, so it's like sci-fi, fantasy, and horror. But I do not care for fantasy, and I can't stand science fiction. I do not like science fiction. I did read some when I was younger, but I tried to read some for, my MFA that I just earned last month, and I don't like it anymore. I'm more on the spectrum of like maybe some dark fantasy, horror, dark crime, crime, anything supernatural, mystery.
Things with more intrigue, it sounds like.
Yes.
Yeah. Whereas sci-fi is just kind of altruistic and utopian most of the time, unless it's cyberpunk, in which case the future is ruined.
Yeah.
So it's funny that you're talking about, mystery and horror, but you don't like sci-fi because, there's a bit of speculative DNA, shall we say, in both. I'm guessing maybe that it's because in the horror genre, the speculative nature is more about the characters than, in sci-fi, maybe it's about technology and you don't care about technology. Do you think that's an accurate statement, or do you think there's a better way to phrase it?
I think that is accurate. Also, I guess like the topics that they tackle in science fiction, just they don't really interest me. I'm looking for something with crime, anything sordid, anything having to do with squalor, having to do with the supernatural, things like that. That's what I'm more interested in. I'm not really excited about the premise being able to be possible somehow scientifically, either now or in the future. And I watch more sci-fi than I would read. I don't enjoy reading it. But like movies such as Splinter, which is kind of a mixture of horror and sci-fi.
It kind of is, yeah. I mean, did they ever explain where that thing came from? Was there like a shooting star in the beginning of the film or something?
I think it had some kind of a alien cause to it. So, they're not big on the science part, but I thought that was a nice mix.
Mm-hmm. So for the adult section, do you remember the last person you hurt?
Probably my last boyfriend that I broke up with last summer. Okay. I don't think I, traumatized him or hurt him terribly, but I let him down.
Breakups do.
Definitely,
Yes.
So.
Last person you helped?
Last person I helped. I have a friend here in town, and he's been wanting to paint his bedroom in his apartment for months, and can't afford the paint. So I gave him some money toward a gallon of paint.
Okay. Have you had any scary dreams as an adult?
I have. Not as many. I was put on some kind of a medication by a doctor, and it sparked nightmares. I can't remember, what they were about or anything, but I just remember waking up, from them. So, discontinued the medication. They went away.
Mm-hmm.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Has there ever been anything in real life that had terrified you as an adult?
Yes, this is starting to come out in my fiction. Like when I was writing The Covenant Sacrifice, I've been working on that for like 15 years. And so this was back during I don't necessarily want to get political, but just so you understand from my personal situation, conservative politics isn't very kind to LGBTQ people.
No.
And it's, it's true.
That is unfortunately a thing.
Yeah, it is a thing. And so I started working on this novel about religious Christian-based homophobia. I had the idea and I wanted to put it out there, and then Obama took office and things changed for the better. So I thought, well, this story isn't as relevant anymore. People can get married
8 years later.
Right. Just wait.
Yeah. Well, it was, that kind of a break there where I could like stew and think about things, when Trump came into office, then I resurrected that project and I started working on it diligently, and it carried me through for 4 years. But I did not feel safe during those entire 4 years. I suppose it's how conservatives feel, when a Democrat is in office in the U.S. That they're very disturbed about what's going on. But I just never knew when my rights were going to be pulled out from under me.
Flipping that question around, has there ever been a time in your adult years when you felt completely calm or safe or bliss?
Yes. A couple years ago, I came out of a protracted depression and I just started getting better. And then I was very prolific and wrote several books during that time that are still in the pipeline. My house was paid off. My car was paid off. Everything was good. I enjoyed that, and I made use of it.
Mm-hmm.
Not a bad thing.
Halloween as adult?
Yeah, forgot to ask that.
Say that again?
Asking about if you participated in Halloween as adult. Favorite costume, least favorite costume?
I don't really celebrate any holidays except Halloween. Mm-hmm. Basically, the few decorations that I have, they're up all year round. So
I'm the same way. It's like, how many skulls does one need in the house?
I am
the answer is all.
Yes, I love skulls. There are skulls in just about every room. I do like the skulls for some reason. Anybody that's anyone has one. Just think about it. Anyone.
I mean, everybody has one. Do you mean anyone who's anyone has two?
Anybody who has one. Wait, I can't remember what I said now. That reminds me of I think it was a Ray Bradbury story about some guy realizing that on the inside of him is a skeleton. He's afraid of skeletons. So I do like the skeletons and the skulls. Yeah. I have probably 20 t-shirts. At least 15 of them have skulls on them.
Same. I have an entire chest of drawers that's all t-shirts, and 75% of them are either skeletons or horror.
Yep.
This is a topic that hasn't come up in the call. I'm curious to dig into that. What do you love about skulls?
Well, they've always got a smile on their face. I don't really know where the love of skulls came from, but I just do love them. And there's a lot of AI art that is being, shopped around on Facebook groups and stuff like that I'm appreciating. But this is where your brain lives. And seeing it, they're not that sturdy. They have fissures in them. If you've ever seen a child's skull, it is a true nightmare. Because before their adult teeth have descended, their baby teeth have fallen out and the adult ones come down. They're like stored up there, like under your nose and above your lips. And it's just, wow, that's really horrifying to me.
So the next two questions I'm going to ask at the same time, because it could be the same answer for both, or it could be two different answers. But what would you say is your favorite movie, and what would you say have you watched more times than any other?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't know if I can really say that I have an all-time favorite movie. Like I've divided them into various genres or categories, and I have, I guess, some favorites in each. What have I watched the most? I really liked The Others, a relatively recent one with Nicole Kidman. I kind of like that supernatural thriller and horror combination. What's another one that I've watched? I've watched Night of the Living Dead numerous times.
You have to watch that one on July 3rd. I mean, that's tradition.
Yeah. Yeah. And
wait, did you say Night or Return?
Night.
Oh,
see,
never mind.
I lived in Pittsburgh most of my life. And so the newscaster that was on that movie, he was actually a Pittsburgh newscaster. And they called him Chili Billy Cardilli. Bill Cardell. And then they call him Chili Willy Cardilli because besides, doing the news or maybe it was the weather, he also hosted some kind of a Saturday horror movie feature, so he was the host of that. And then they would show some, old horror movie. And those are the ones that I watched when I was, adolescent, young teenager. What else have I bought recently?
When we ask about favorite movie, we understand that, it's a moving target and things change, from moment to moment. But usually there's a deeper reason why one comes to mind. And so if I were to ask, what's the first one that comes to mind? What would you say?
Yeah, see, I'm like searching in my head. There isn't one that's like really popping up. I'm like trying to review my DVD shelves. I think a movie called Chained. It's I think it's 2012 or 2013. It was, I believe, it was Jennifer Lynch's debut.
It was.
Yes,
that's right.
Yes, Vincent D'Onofrio.
David Lynch's daughter.
Yes, David Lynch's daughter, and she.
What'd you like about that one?
Character development. Vincent D'Onofrio is not my favorite actor. I just don't really enjoy watching him, but I cannot say that he's not a good actor. And he certainly did a great job of playing this serial killer who raises the son of one of his woman victims. But just the situation of, this kid being chained in the house and being raised with values to become a serial killer like his adoptive father. I just thought was really, really kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Jennifer Lynch, I think, also directed something recently that I saw. Was she the director of Brand New Cherry Flavor? Something I've watched recently. There's some kind of a Netflix show that I've watched recently that I've seen her name on. Maybe it's not that, but
Brand New Cherry Flavor was awesome.
Yeah, that's
cats.
That I would have to say that's one of my all-time favorite series.
What'd you like about that?
It was just very different. I didn't really know what to expect. So there was horror in it. There was basically witchcraft. I can't remember the name of the woman that plays Boro, but she came off so sweet and so laid back, but she was like really, she had bad things in mind for people, and she was willing, willing to do them if you could give her what she wanted.
Yeah. And it was effectively delivered because I kind of fell into the trap of her being a benevolent character when she's introduced. She seems like the sweet old grandmother character that's here to help the protagonist.
Yeah.
But as the series goes along, you're like, no, she's just here to get what she wants. She doesn't care who the hell she steps on to get. This woman is evil.
Yeah, she's really gave me the creeps. And just like the relentless of things getting worse and worse for whoever the director guy was, one of the antagonists of Lisa Nova.
Do you see any kinds of common threads about what kind of horror you like? Cannibalism, occult, metaphysical, supernatural?
I've always loved ghost stories. So things like The Other and The Others, they both fit into that category. Ghost Story by Peter Straub is, something that sticks in my mind, is something that I really like. I do like psychopaths and movies about them. In Dreams, which was Robert Downey Jr.
Oh, yeah.
From, I don't know, maybe like 15 years ago.
There is somewhat of just an intrigue to psychopaths, like The Cell also. Just like people that are wired incorrectly internally and why they do the horrible things they do.
Yes. Yeah, that would be like my book, The Bedwetter, Journal of a Budding Psychopath. Did a lot of research for that, and I felt like that character kind of like really, you talk about character possession, and fiction writers talk about that, where, the character just kind of wants to do a thing of their own. So you have to follow them and write them through it to see what they're going to do. But I felt like I was possessed by this character, and just writing in his voice from first person present just, took me like, it only took me like, I don't know, it wasn't even 3 months to write the book. And I was just like consumed with it. It's about this kid in high school. He was a skinny kid, didn't talk much. We weren't real, close friends or anything, but he had pretty long hair. And then one day he came to school and his head was buzzed. And I said, hey, man, you really got a haircut, why'd you decide to do that? And he got extremely upset. And he never told me, but I guess maybe this other girl was standing there, and she said, whenever he wets the bed, his parents shave his head.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that story idea just really gripped me until I developed a character, and then the character kind of took me over and wrote his own story. So that one is probably one of my darkest books. Very twisted.
That's heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was going in a different direction, but that was not the direction I was expecting.
Well, it causes this the character in the book to then fantasize about finding some woman that he can shave, and things don't turn out well. That's all I'll say.
I wouldn't think so. Is it on par with Maniac? Does he go a little too close on the shave?
Yeah. You could say that. I just watched. I watched the original one. I think it was last year. I watched the one with Elijah Wood, whom I love, just like 2 weeks ago.
Just as good, right? And they both have their strong suits.
Yeah.
He did a good job recreating it.
He did. I think so.
So this is normally where we would give a summary of any topics that have come up multiple times and then discuss that, and also maybe give you an opportunity to say we're right or wrong or adjust the synopsis if you think it needs adjusting. 2 or 3 things that I think have come up multiple times. Early on, you mentioned being an adrenaline junkie and some of the things that you liked, but as the conversation continued, it seemed like the topics that have been coming up more often have been about vulnerability in relationships.
I think that is insightful, and I would tend to agree with you there. I think my early fiction was more situational about things, but then the more I studied about character and how important characterization was, then I started studying about character arcs and how can you make your characters memorable, how can you make them really put them between a rock and a hard place by forcing them to deal with their issues. And because it's horror, a lot of characters have some kind of a ghost or a wound from their past that has prevented them from realizing their full potential or coming into happiness or something like that. And usually for me, with horror or psychological thriller or something like that, it's going to be something that's very traumatic, like having your head shaved because you wet the bed. So there, especially I would say in the Covenant Sacrifice, some people have complained that they don't like the romance in it. They just want horror. But I would say that it has a plot, that it's a dual plot, of horror and gay romance. And there's a particular traumatic situation that happened in the past that is preventing my main character, Jared Huntingdon, from finding happiness in life. And then the horrific plot situation forces him to deal with that so that he resolves both issues at the same time, both the horror plot and the romance plot. So there's it's all about character. It's all about vulnerability and those kind of relationships now.
Well, I can understand your interest in that topic in the auteur sense of being an author and obviously wanting to write better stories. But from a personal sense, do you have any idea why it is that is important to you?
I think
and the reason, just to be clear, the reason I'm asking that is because that is a topic it seemed to come up even outside of or before you became an author.
Yes, I am getting to the point where I don't know. I still seem to love all the horrific things that I loved as a child, like skulls. I'm still dealing with, being accepted as a person. Still dealing with coming out and my orientation. So all of my books, my novels, deal with some kind of a personal issue that I guess I need to resolve because they're important to me and because they're so I'm trying to look for a word here, not traumatic, but it's just something that I've really needed to deal with in life, but like coming out, that these things are cropping up in my fiction. So yes, they have happened in my life, and I mean, what else can I draw from? They say write what you know.
Right.
So I try to do that. So that's why a lot of my new stuff that I'm coming out with, the stuff that's still in the pipeline, and the Covenant Sacrifice that just came out, has to do with homophobia.
I like what you said about acceptance and resolution, because I was actually writing the word resolution like half a second before you said it. And what you said there a second ago about struggling to find a word and not wanting to say traumatic, I think what I was feeling there is that having something that's unresolved, it doesn't have to be traumatic for the lack of resolution to be disturbing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. There are plenty of situations that are, I guess, great or nagging fears in my life. Things that have always stuck with me and really color how I see things, how I react, how I'm able to connect or not connect with people. And those are the things, my greatest fears that I try to put into my books, and hopefully through them come to a better place. If my character can do it, with some ramped up horrific plot in the background, then, maybe I can do it too.
Interesting way of segueing into what I was going to ask, and may lead into the answer as well. I was going to say, if lack of resolution can be disturbing without being traumatic, then why horror as a genre? Why not a different genre?
Yeah, I guess, and this is the way I explain it. I don't know whether it's truth or bullshit, but having dealt with lifelong depression and anxiety, everything that I've experienced, it's not. Some things are unique to me, and some things are unique to everybody. But a lot of what we experience, a lot of other people experience also. But of course, you feel like, or you wonder, like, if you're the only one that feels that way. And so my mental state and my mental health has colored everything that I see. So I have typically looked at things pessimistically and see them kind of in a negative light. And so those are the kind of situations and ideas that I get. They always seem to be couched in horror because, like being confronted in the restroom by somebody, that to me that was a great fear and a great horror for me, and something that I didn't like. So how else can I write a story where somebody's like really well adjusted and they look at something and they know how to tackle it? That's not me.
Well, that just sounds boring.
Yeah.
Everything goes right? What? No.
Yeah. So
Joseph Campbell would not approve. There is no conflict.
yeah, but I do try to if my characters have some kind of a terrible ghost or wound from their past that they need to deal with, that I come up with some situation where they actually do deal with it. So they either have a hero's journey or they're on the road to tragedy.
That's fairly accurate for not just horror. either you're on a path to good or you're on a path to bad. One of the two.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything that you've thought of that maybe was relevant that hasn't come up on the call, or maybe you thought of something and then we kind of, the conversation took a left turn, you didn't get to say it?
I had a Twitter conversation with a guy named Joe Koch, Koch, and I just got his little novella called The Shipwreck of the Cerberus. He's a literary horror writer, and we were tweeting back and forth about metaphysical things that happen, like your story crashing and then you lose every vestige backup of it anywhere on your computer and it's gone. Like last week, I deleted my entire author's email list. It was just gone. It was horrible. But then we got to talking about prescience in fiction. And, some of these things that I write about have actually come to pass in my life. Like in The Sixth Seed, there's a man and his wife that end up in financial straits and they're forced to move to a bad part of town. Well, a few years later, the exact same thing happened to me. In Death Perception, there's a character that can discern mediumistically discern the cause of death of the people that he cremates, and so he ends up talking with the dead. Well, I didn't believe anything like that at the time, but 10 years later, I'm living near Lilydale, New York, which is the spiritualist capital of the world, and I'm being trained as a medium. So there's something deep-seated about the ideas and the things and the situations, the fears, the traumas that I've dealt with. They come out in my writing, and if they're not based on something in the past, then some of them prove true in the future, and I hope that is not the case for The Bedwetter.
Or potentially any of the other things you've written about, really.
Yes. Yeah.
Well,
do you by any chance have a cursed pen of some sort? Is it maybe like a relic that makes things come true? Possessed typewriter?
I used to type on a typewriter. No, I don't have a possessed pen.
Okay.
So there's tying back to the monkey's paw. You wished for something, and
exactly.
Well, it's been a pleasant conversation.
Yes, I've enjoyed speaking with you.
Yes, same. So thank you to you and to anybody out there listening. If you like what you were doing, help us out. You can either tell a friend or tell a stranger. Support us on Patreon, buy us a coffee, or get some merch. We've got all that and some more on our website, horrormakesushappy.com.